Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. Mary Morrissey, welcome to the show today. So happy to have you on.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Good. You've got a great message, and you've actually been working in the empowerment space for over 4 decades. But I really like the fact that your work is really focused on helping people create the lives that they love. And I would even say people living their passion and their purpose, right? Is that accurate to say?
That's right.
Yeah. So, and we're going to talk about, on today's show, we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. And we're going to talk about a lot of the work that you are currently doing, but really, what got you started in this space? Kind of how did you start? I think, we all in life want some form of transformation. We all want to live a better, happier, healthier, more passionate. It doesn't matter how successful we are in any area of your life. I think there's always room for us to improve or expand. But what got you started down this path?
Well, thanks for asking. That's really seminal in what caused me to do the work I've done over the last 40 years. I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon, a suburb of Portland, Oregon. Had a high school experience like most young girls dream about. I was my junior year, I'm class vice president. I'm on the drill team. I have a lead in the junior play. I'm the homecoming princess. And at the end of my junior year in high school, my high school boyfriend had gone off to college, came home on spring break. I get pregnant.
Oh, wow. This is going to be a fun show. I already know. You're already disclosing stuff. This is going to be a fun show. All right. And I'm assuming it wasn't immaculate conception. Okay.
My name is Mary.
Yeah. Well, I just thought, Mary, and I was like, wow, we're going to hear, and you're going to tell us about a new baby Jesus.
My mother wept for me as if I had died.
Right.
We had a hasty 10-person wedding. So it's now May of 1966, and a couple of weeks later, the principal of the high school calls me in his office, and he says, "Are these rumors I'm hearing about you true?" And I said, "Well, if the rumors are that I'm pregnant and married in that order, then yes, they're true." And he just put his head down, and he says, "You have terrific honors and great grades, but you are not going to be allowed to return here for your senior year."
Oh, my gosh.
It would be totally inappropriate for a pregnant girl to get mixed in with the normal girls.
Right.
But if you do want to get a high school diploma, and my dream had always been to be a teacher, my professional dream, I want to be a teacher. Right. So I saw this as a detour, but not a dead end. And I did want a high school diploma, and I did want to get my undergraduate degree in education. So we have a place for people like you. It's across the river. It's not held during daylight. It's after dark. And it's where a regular high school, Washington High School, became, without changing the sign, Washington Evening High School. And I would be allowed to go to complete my high school education there with pregnant girls and delinquent boys.
Oh, my gosh.
This is my new group. So I remember driving in a part of Portland I hadn't been allowed to drive in after dark, and parking my car, walking up to this big school thinking, okay, this is my new student body, pregnant
right.
who have babies or are pregnant like me, and guys who are delinquents. Now, I don't know where you were, Matt, as you started your senior year, but that's not a place most people are. That was how I began my senior year. My son was born in December. I graduated from Washington Evening High School in May. And in July, I found myself in an intensive care ward in a Portland hospital, having been diagnosed with fatal kidney disease.
Oh, my gosh.
One kidney was totally destroyed with nephritis, kidney disease. The other had 50% destruction and active nephritis. Now, in 1967, this is a death sentence without dialysis and transplants.
Right.
And all of the wonderful doctors and people, others were just saying, we are horrifically sorry. But we don't have a cure for this. And finally one of the surgeons came in and said, "We decided that if we can get your blood toxin level reduced enough to sustain a surgery to remove that right kidney, maybe you'd have 6 months."
Wow.
And I am terrified. I'm 18 years old. I have a 7-month-old son who I'm thinking I may never see walk, let alone kindergarten or all the other things that happen in a child's life. I'll never become a teacher. And the God of my upbringing was not a friendly place to go when you felt like you had really screwed up. Clearly, I had been categorized with the bad people. I mean, the
Right.
delinquents and the pregnant girls were all one group.
And here's the proof you've had this disease now, right? So this is God's wrath, right?
I felt like I was being punished.
Yeah, of course.
Finally, the surgery was scheduled. And the night before the surgery, a woman walked in my room about 9:00 at night who identified herself as a visiting chaplain. And she said that she came several times a week and got the list of the surgeries the next morning. And in the order of the most serious, my name was at the top of the list, and I want someone to pray with me. And I was scared, and I said, okay. So she pulled her chair next to my bed, and she didn't do anything that looked like prayer. She talked to me, and it started this way, where she asked me, would you be willing to tell me what's been going on in your life the last year or two? So I told her my story.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of which she looked at me compassionately and she said, Mary, everything is created twice. And today I would say I had no landing page for that.
Right.
I had this look on my, she says, you know this. Actually, everybody knows this. Almost nobody knows the power of knowing this. The bed you're lying on, the nightgown you're wearing, the sheet covering you, the walls, the ceiling, the floor, all the machinery you're hooked up to. First, it had to be a thought before it could be a thing. And then she said, I hear how much you love your little boy, but I also hear how much you've been hating yourself. You feel like you shamed your family, you shamed your school, you shamed yourself. And that thinking has an energy to it. And I'm wondering if you could consider the possibility that there could be a correlation between that toxic thinking and the toxicity that is rampaging your body and threatening your very life. Nobody I knew, this is 1970,
No.
I knew, thought this way, spoke this way.
No, yes.
God. Then she asked me, if you could live, what would you do? So I told her I would raise my little boy and I'd become a teacher. First, she asked me if I could believe that we could say a prayer and dissolve all that toxicity. The morning when the doctors came in, they would say, you look so much better, we better test you. And then they say, we find no dis-ease in you. You can get up and go home. She said, could I believe that's possible? And I said, no. Not even a cell of belief that
right.
she words, and I've been in so much pain. I believe way more in that and the doctors. Those days, the MDs meant to most of us, my generation, minor deities.
Yeah, exactly.
It was God. She says, okay, if you can't believe this, then could you believe it's possible? Before I ask you the rest of this question, I want you to consider that we are in a universe of infinite possibility. So couldn't there be one possibility in the infinity of possibilities that we could say a prayer and we could shift what's going on internally in you through your practice, and then you start to get better and better and better, and then you're well. Could you believe that's even possible? Nobody I knew thought it was possible. Here was one person who thought it might be possible. And I didn't consciously decide to believe in her belief, but I unconsciously must have, because I said, well, I don't know if it's probable, but I guess it could be possible.
Possible, right.
And she said, that's all we need. One corner of your mind open to the possibility. Now, this is before David Bohm, Sheldrake writing about unified field theory, Max Talbot out of Stanford writing holographic universe. And there was no mind-body clinic in the United States at that time, not at Harvard, not at Stanford, not at UCLA. And she said, okay, then here's what I want you to do. In a moment, we're going to do a prayer in which we're going to imaginally scoop everything toxic in your body and put it in that one kidney. And we're going to put all the shame and all the self-blame and all the self-loathing that has come from that. And we're going to put that in that kidney. And we're going to imagine that in the morning when that's removed, all that is removed. Now, your mind's going to be busy the first day or two or three with the pain that you're feeling from a surgery. But after that, your mind is going to want to go down the well-worn paths of thinking that you've been doing this last year and a half. You're going to have to interrupt that. So here's what I want you to do. The moment you notice your thinking is shame-filled or self-loathing thought, interrupt it and say, no, that left with the kidney. And then immediately imagine you've got this little boy's hand in yours. It's a warm hand. And you're walking into a school and there's a kindergarten class and your boy's 5 years old. You feel the warmth of his hand. You walk up the steps together. He goes in his classroom and you hear the click, click, click of your heels as you go down the hallway and around the corner, and there's your first classroom. Then immediately fast forward in your mind, and you're sitting in a big auditorium or a stadium, and down on the floor are all these caps and gowns, and you hear your son's name called, and he crosses the stage, gets his diploma, waves, and you're all cheering and celebrating him hitting this mark in his life, and your teaching career is growing. Then fast forward in your mind, and you're sitting in the front row of a wedding. You're the mother of the groom, and your son is marrying the love of his life, and your teaching career is flourishing. Just keep doing that. And then she left. The next thing I really noticed was when they came to wake me up for the surgery in the morning, I had slept all night. I hadn't done that in months. I'd been in so much weeks, really. By then it was about 12 weeks, like 15 days in intensive care prior to this. So surgery happened, and about 7 days later, the head guy came in and said, listen, your numbers have, we expected. The surgeon told my family gathered that one kidney was totally destroyed. The other was all pockmarked and shriveled, and it had at least 50% damage. He didn't know how much time I'd have. But my numbers had stabilized enough that they said, so you might be getting a little more time, but even if you just want to go home for 2 weeks before you have to come back to the hospital, would you like that? And I said, yes. I could hold my boy, I could. And I went home in an ambulance. I was so weak, I couldn't hardly lift my head off a pillow. And I had to go 3 times a week to get monitored. But slowly and slowly, my numbers not only stayed steady, but they started to improve slightly. And at 5 months, between the 5 and 6 month mark after that surgery, I'm sitting in a conference room at the hospital with all the primary people, the surgeon, the neurologist, and they're shaking their heads and they say, we have no science. And the surgeon said, I saw that kidney. I know what it looked like. There is no science for why it should be functioning as a whole perfect kidney. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I didn't know what I was doing. I had today we would call that an unconscious confident. I did the shifting of the frequency, that the major dominant frequency I was operating from. And I was happy about that, but I was not curious for about 3 more years. And I got myself into undergraduate school, and a series of things occurred in the fall of 1971. So this was 67. So 4 years later, a series of things occurred that are a much longer story. But nevertheless, I began to see, what happened here? And how did that really work? And is that a one-time unique kind of thing we would call a miracle? Or is there a science in this? And so I began to study everything I could find in the field of transformation, from all the religions, ancient philosophy. It led me to not only get my undergraduate degree, but by then I was pretty sure I wanted to teach, freedom and liberation.
Right.
Love versus, because it changed my life so dramatically, the study, the kind of happiness I had come to feel, the feeling that I had never had before that would start to rise up in me spontaneously multiple times a day, that wasn't me thinking it. It was just this, I love my life. And I didn't even have that after I was happy about getting over the kidney disease, but I didn't have that. And I began to realize that is a normal thing for people. I mean, it's not normal. It's natural for us. That's working in harmony with ourselves. It's not normal. Most of us don't feel that very often. And I just wanted to study what it would take for that to be. Is there a system that's reliable, repeatable, and is scientific in its base? So then I got a master's degree in counseling psychology, earned an honorary doctorate in humane letters, went around the world meeting people. I did 7 years of work with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, did work with Nelson Mandela, spoke at the UN 3 times. it just led me to more and more. Got to talk to Rosa Parks. How did you find that power in you? You're sitting on a bus. Other people in your row get up and go to the back. You say no, and the driver of the bus has a gun strapped to his thigh and the legal right to use it on you. And you said no. And she talked about touching that space. Of course, Martin Luther King had taught Gandhi's principles of nonviolence and what the power in us that's greater than retribution and using other kinds of force. It's a soul force. And she said it wasn't like a heroic thing. It was the right thing. And that it was the right thing gave me a power. But it took, anyway, her story's a little longer. But so I began to teach in 1981, grew very, very slowly, and then I got a mentor, and one thing led to another. So I've had great success, a couple of belly flop failures along the way, but applying these principles. So today I have founded Brave Thinking Institute and have the privilege of working with people all over the world.
Interesting. So interesting. I love your story. I could just listen. I could, when you were saying that's a longer story, I could literally just have you tell me offline all those stories for days. I love the story of transformation. I love the story of wonderment. It piqued my curiosity when you were telling the story. The nun or the chaplain that was, did you ever see her again? Was she ever?
For many years, she came after I had opened my first work in Portland, Oregon. I was probably in it 5 or 6 years, and she was elderly by then, and she came and she said, "Do you remember me?" And I had no memory of her. I was so sick.
Oh my,
anyway.
Yeah.
And so she told me her name was Mila Warren. She had studied metaphysics.
Okay, yeah.
We saw it in those days. My first metaphysical book, As a Man Thinketh, written, which is pretty mainstream. Nevertheless, when I tried to find it in Portland, I had to go to, this is 1971. Now, as I'm beginning to explore some things, it was in a building on like 17th floor down a long dark hallway to an occult bookstore. When I asked, "Where's the James? Do you have the James Allen book, As a Man Thinketh?" Yeah, it's right in there. It's right next to witchcraft. Remember Marconi? They put Marconi in prison for saying these airwaves, things could travel through these airwaves. And it was like,
right.
Thoughts impact everything. It's been slow to catch on, although people in the East have known it for a long time.
Sure. And so you work with people and helping them create lives that they love. How do you do that? I guess tactically, literally. I mean, how do you help people understand what they love and then live that life?
It took me years and years to do the work and study how other people saw transformation occurring, to put together a pattern of how it can be replicated for anyone who wants to apply it to their life in any of the areas where you look at your results, and you have results in 4 main areas. If you just keep breathing, you're going to have results in your life. Then you can measure those results, but what causes those results has been my study. Because most of us have been trained to say, my results are, I had that success, I was in the right place at the right time, or it was who I knew, or I had that didn't go well for me, I was raised this way. And looking at conditions, either for permission to do the things you want to do, or for the reasons you're not. And conditions are actually effects. They're not causes. So I'm at the beginning of my work with people in large groups and corporate, people from all over the world. We do an assessment about what the results we have. We take a look at our results in the 4 main areas of life where you find results. Health, we can measure your results. The quality, depth, and fulfillment in your relationships. Everybody has relationships. Your work, whether you get paid for it or not, it's your vocari. It's where you express your time and talent in the world, whether it's a hobby or volunteering, or it's building a business or sailing around the world. What are you doing with your time and talent? And how fulfilling is it? And then time and money freedom. People that think they want more money, But what they really want is freedom, the freedom to go where they want to go, do what they want to do, have what they want to have, and maybe even more importantly, give what they want to give. So we do an assessment in those areas, and then notice which of the areas you have more fulfillment in, and probably maybe you're really happy with. You know, some people are really happy with their career, but their relationships keep falling apart, or their health is falling apart, or it's easy to be wealthy in one area and bankrupt in another if you don't have a full spectrum wealth system you're applying to your life, which is what I teach, and that you can actually have that. But everything starts with vision. And so when we look at their results, and then how long has it been like that? And that's a tough question. So I want the love of my life. All right, how long is that? And particularly, we see it in my women clients, particularly men too, but more predominantly in my women clients. They want that love of their life and don't want to put their head on the pillow the last time and wonder what it would have been like. And then time and money freedom. What if you look at that, and many people have just a pattern of struggling with money. I find money the easiest one to fix, honestly. So then we look also, the next question is, what's it costing you to not change that? Because sometimes we can go on without just saying, oh, I'll get to that. And then you turn around and you either don't have the time, something happened, you know. So we don't have forever. Even those who live, 90s or 100s. I've sat, because I was a minister for 23 years, I've sat at many a deathbed, many with people in their last moments, and everybody wishes they had more time. Almost everybody wishes they had more time, no matter what their age. We love life. Deep down, we all want to have this life. So while we're having it, let's create what we can create. Because there's an art and science to transformation. The art is in the visioning, but the science is in the vibration.
And what do you mean by that? So let's just, because I always love to give our audience and our listeners real tactical things. So
think about your television. Your TV's black. There's programming. There's things that could happen that if you would love to have a sporting event. You'd love to have the concert. You'd love to have whatever the movie you want to see. I noticed that the new Top Gun movie now is available on my pay-per-view.
Right.
I want to see that. I saw it in a movie theater, but I'd see it again. So the same difference between the TV and you and me is we don't turn off. As long as we're breathing, we're turned on.
Right.
But the picture we're seeing is an exact match to the vibration we're tuned to. So the sporting event can be on ESPN, but if I'm tuned to CNN, which is a problem network, I'm going to see all the problems, even though I know this other world is available to me, but I'm not a match for it. Because and then with the television, you got a remote control, way easier. The remote control in us is harder to find. We have solid state technology in a television, not in us. We go in and out, up and down. We're going to do this new thing, and then we back off. We make a decision, and then we question it. So there's wobble in the vibration. So learning how to be, and good news, you don't have to be perfect at it, but it is a more than less game. Which frequency you're on more. Shifting that is a process. It's a process of transformation. So this system that I put together doesn't belong to me. It belongs to really the universe or the infinite or God, whatever you spirit, whatever the energy, whatever you call it, because that's how it works. I just put it together in a simple, easy to replicate form so that people could see in their own lives what it can do for them. And that's really what happened for me in 1971. In the next 10 months, my life my internal as well as external life had changed so radically. I wanted everybody I knew to have this. I tried to give it to my parents or my best friends. Everybody was going, Mary got religion. It wasn't religion. And I finally realized, it doesn't get transmitted that way. It's just I need to, they'll either catch it or not catch it. They'll either see something and wonder what's going on, or they won't. Some did and some didn't. As it is.
And so, can you give us a couple examples of some clients that you've worked with, specifically kind of how they came in and then how you worked with them and then kind of what their life, because you've talked about your life. It'd be curious. I'm very curious about, and you can use, whoever you choose to. Yeah.
I can give you. We had a client who signed up, to kind of the basic program and then came to a training, a live in-person training. And he owned 3 businesses, none of which they were, producing, they were profitable, but he was, overworked, tired, a little bit overweight, stressed, but accomplished. So the whole fulfillment factor, because when someone's accomplished and then you speak about a life you would really love, there's an internal, you have to watch for the internal threat of loss. I might lose the good I have if I.
Right.
Yep. So as we were going through the assessment period, he said to me, he says, my vision now is, and he was expanding these businesses and what that could mean. And then he said, it's just too bad you can't turn your favorite hobby into a business. And I said, well, how do you know? Well, nobody's made a business of this, but how do you know you can't? So let's go back to the fundamental question. What would you love? Not what do you think you can do? What does the economy say you can do? So you remove your attention from conditions and instead put it on if all the opportunities, all the possibilities in the universe exist, what's the one that I want to resonate with? And so he loved flying drones. This is 12 years ago. He loved flying drones. And he says, I never want to get off the field. I love the mechanics of it. I love I've trained some kids in junior high on them. And I said, Damon, if you would love that business, let's create the business. It can even be a side business in the beginning. Right. And I would say it wasn't even 3 years, Matt. It was 2.5 years or so. And it was like, it started taking off. So he became the drone boss. He's got all these, he's trained hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands by now, people in the business side of, a hobby of drones or a business of drones, how to multiply that business. And he's applied everything he learned in the system we trained him in. And it's been so fun to see him and his wife, who then, she was a pharmacist and working really long hours, and they began to work together, and she became a trainer to just see their lives prosper. That's one. Another one, there was a woman named Kelly who was from Minnesota. She came for a training. She used 2 canes and some of the time in a wheelchair. And she was a professor at the in Minnesota at the university there. And she had developed an autoimmune disease that was debilitating. And so she was she was on medical leave, and they were about to drop her from that because it had been 2 years since she'd worked. And when she spoke about not being able to change this and what it was costing her, it was, she just was, as I think any of us might be, tearful. You've got 2 little kids. She's laying, it's winter. It's snowing outside, and her little girls want to go out and build a snowman. And so the husband takes them out, and she's laying on the couch she can't get off of, and watching them build a snowman she can't go help build. And somehow she found what I'm doing. She got herself there. So we began to work together. And of course, I could believe for her when she couldn't believe for herself because of my own experience. And we just took systematic steps. It was about 18 months. Kelly went back to work. She's private. She started her own business, helping people in that area overcome all kinds of different challenges. And they're doing outreach to young girls in situations where they need help. And just so rewarding, because what was going on inside of her was no longer a match for the dis-ease, as in the very name of it. An internal pattern that's going on. We get that cleared up. People usually almost immediately, as that gets cleared up, start to feel better, even if it takes a while to shift the results that got patterned in for sometimes even decades.
Right.
Let me think. I've got so many wonderful stories. Benny Vaughn. Benny's a gorgeous man from Texas. He was an athlete for many, many years. He's opened a business training and particularly training Olympic athletes.
Mm-hmm.
He's a gorgeous black man, very tall. And so he enrolled, and he was doing physical therapy on athletes and helping train them, but working all these hours. And in the interview where we talked, he had collapsed in a parking lot.
Oh, my.
3 months before that, and somebody found him. They took him to the hospital. Anyway, when his doctor said to him, Benny, you're going to die. You are under so much stress. You can't keep, stress is killing. You can't keep doing this. But he saw no way out. And then somebody told him about the public event we were doing in Dallas. He came and he enrolled, and we began to work together. And he was a very quick learner, had some big goals about this most recent Olympics. So I think he's been there now 4 or 5 years. And he had not taken a vacation with his wife. He adores, they have no children. They have each other and their dogs in 20 some years. So now 2 major trips a year. They were just in New Zealand hiking and the things they love to do, and his business. He didn't know how to scale
it, right? Yep.
So, you're a business guy. So we just helped him. Then later he told me, he says, I haven't told you this, but when the doctor said I needed help to figure out how to overcome my stress, he said, you need either a therapist or you need a psychologist. And he said, well, whoever you find for me, but it has to be an African-American male.
Right.
Last time he went to his physician and he talked about his health, and they did a heart scan, and everything is like great, and all his blood pressures and all the numbers. And the doctor said, so did you find that African-American therapist to help you? And he said, yes, she's actually a 5'1" white woman.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love it. I love it. So people typically come to an online workshop. They come to an in-person workshop. Is that how people typically start the process of kind of this with your work specifically?
We do 3 public events a year, and during COVID, we shifted those from in-person, of course, to online, which has radically expanded people's availability to come for 3 days, particularly internationally.
Sure.
So it's an experiential. It's not just lecturing at people, but there's processes and engagements. And but if people are willing to come to that, they leave with a crystal clear vision and the 5 basic tools that they can use themselves, or they can enroll in a longer support program with us that we do trainings. So it's that next one's coming up virtual in October 7th, 8th, and 9th. Yeah. 7th,
8th, and 9th. And then when you say there's a longer program, there's like what does that look like? Time frame, and what you do in that program?
Well, I call it brave thinking. It's not easy to think while you suspend the conditions that you've been trained. We have all had decades of programming in how things occur, and it's backwards. That's an outside-in model. The television doesn't show us its picture because of conditions. It shows us its picture because of the frequency we're tuned to. Pick up your cell phone. There's a specific frequency for every person you're going to call. It's provable. I mean, when you dial your wife's phone number, you are not expecting somebody else. You're expecting.
Right.
So how that occurs in the human system, because we're 7+ billion people on the planet. There are not 7 billion minds. There is one mind and 7 billion interfaces like computers that traverse between the infinite and the finite. So you think about even your computer. If you didn't know how to get on the internet, you only have access to the files, the things you thought before or found or stored.
Right.
That's your whole data access. Once you learn to get on the internet, you have access to basically everything humans have ever written about,
Right.
codified, stored for about 6,000 to 8,000 years. It's all there. You can find access to it. We also have another access point in us. It's not to the internet, but it's to the infinite. We did not create ourselves. We're not breathing ourselves. We're part of it. It's a spiritual side to our nature that you call it soul, call it whatever you want to call it. But you and I cannot even make our heart beat one time.
Right, right.
We've been given complete free will to think whatever we want to think and bear the consequences of it, because there's a science to it. You can't think poverty and live in wealth. And wealth is way more than money. It's way more than money. Knowing that, so I tend to, and I'm blatant about it, I think any transformational program, any personal development program that doesn't have a spiritual component to it is an incomplete program.
Right.
It doesn't address your who you are. You're not just a body. You're not just a human brain. You're more than that. And you have access to that more.
Right. Well, that's pretty amazing. I was watching the documentary the other day. I think it was called Jim W., the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was a pretty fascinating, watching that as a documentary. Bill W. Sorry, Bill. Yeah. Bill W. Thank you for that. But very fascinating, just his own struggles and what he went through. And the fact that he did tie it back to a higher power. And I like he used the phrase God as we understand it. Right. It doesn't mean that my God and your God have to look the same. I mean, it was God,
nothing.
Right. Exactly. It was just being tied to that higher power and that higher sense, which, I think if you're in the personal development space, if you're going to work on yourself or around personal development at all, at some point you're going to come face to face with that there is some higher power. Otherwise you wouldn't be driven to do the personal development. Right.
The man in the sky in robes either.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I think, as you get deeper and deeper into it, it becomes more and more spiritual, because it comes more and more about how, when I say spiritual, how we're relating to the world and how the world's relating to us. That's kind of what I think of when I think spiritual. But, for me, it's also God, and how am I relating with God, and how's God relating with me, and what am I doing with these things that are coming to me, right? And how am I interpreting them and interacting with them? So yeah, I totally think that, if you want to make real progress, I think don't you have to really see the blessings in life that you've already been given, and the grace and all of the positive things that you've already been given.
Gratitude,
right.
Frequency that's harmonious with abundance. Has nothing to do with money. It has to do with aliveness. And that stream. Jesus talked about it this way. He said, when you could drink from the things outside, drink from that well, you're going to thirst again. But if you drink from the truth, it's like a stream of living water that rises up from the center of your own being. And when you drink from this, you don't thirst again. Not in the same way. I mean, we all have things we want to accomplish. But people say, well, I should just be grateful for what I've got. Yes. And that urge of life is always for more. It's always for creating more. The blade of grass in the Talmud, it says, every blade of grass has an angel leaning over it, whispering, grow, grow.
Right. Exactly.
That blade of grass will press through cement today. See,
right. That's right.
It's, it's true that I remember my 5-year-old oldest granddaughter now, she came to visit one time and she got in my car, which was a Yukon in those days, I fair to say, SUV. And I dropped down the television and put on Cinderella for her for the long drive from the airport back to our house. And she was just over the moon. You have a car with a movie theater? And the very next day we got in, she goes, you know what I wish this car had? I wish it had a cookie making machine. Humans,
right? Yeah. Everything, yeah. Oh, yes. Let's just make it even better, right? I mean, since we can imagine that a car has a movie theater, why can't we imagine a car has a cookie making machine, right? I love it. Well, so how do people find out more about you? Your website, marymorrissey.com, I'm assuming?
Well, go to Brave Thinking Institute.
Brave Thinking Institute. Okay, bravethinkinginstitute.com. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you can still get there through my name, but I would go there and then look through the events, and you'll see Dream Builder Live, and you'll see it's called Dream Builder Live Virtual, and it's 3 days. It's in October, and if you decide, I'm saying to the viewer now,
yeah, of course,
you will. I believe you will be really, really glad that you came for what happens for you.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And you've got a couple books you do end that we hadn't mentioned, but no less than Greatness and Building Your Field of Dreams. And so you do have books out, so you could, I'm sure, buy those on
PBS special. My newest book that I've spent decades now putting together, which is the fruition of what I've learned over the last 25 years since Building Your Field of Dreams came out. It's called Brave Thinking, and it'll be out in May. It comes out in May next year.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Well, certainly you'll have to come back on when you...
All kinds of stuff on YouTube and all kinds of stuff that will be helpful. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, when you get ready to release a new book, come on and give us a preview of what's going to be in the book. We'd love to have you back on and visit with you again. And yeah, definitely go check out. And we do have a free, I think we have a free, what are you giving away free today? We've got something free that need to look at it real quick. And we'll put it in the show notes like we usually do. But Mary's Abundance books, an ebook, right? Abundance Blocks. Is that what it's called? Mary's Abundance Blocks? Okay. And it's the
three most common. You know, we
oh, gotcha.
But the block that is in us, in our belief system or in the way we think, can actually prevent it. We're not a match for it. So this is.
Oh, nice. Beautiful. Well, thank you for that. It's just, is it bti.com/BriteVibe? Is that what oh, perfect. Mm-hmm. And again, we'll put it in the show notes, but thank you so much for making that available to our audience. And
Matt, I want to say to you,
yes.
Thank you for dreaming up this podcast. Thank you for what it takes to bring on guests that you could bring to your listeners and viewers. And for the heart. I mean, I can feel that. And the difference that you're making. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And, that just reminded me, because you had mentioned something at the very top of the show. Before we exit today, what call it prayer, call it intention. You can call it whatever you want, Mary, because it's coming from you. But what would you like to set in this podcast, in this show? What intention or prayer would you like to set for everybody listening today? What would be that? What would be those words? Or what would be the words?
Numbers of years ago, I heard, wherever it came from, I heard inspiration without action is merely entertainment. So I'm holding for all of us that if anything inspired you today, that kind of, that we put some action to it, even a baby step. I am a firm believer, after many, many years of work with tens of thousands of people, baby steps you can go all the way up Mount Everest. You just got to keep taking them. So there's some baby step. There's something you can do to incorporate something that happened here or any of the times you come to this amazing podcast. So that's my encouragement for us, is think through what happened here today, and is there anything you can apply?
I love it. Well, thank you so much for that. And certainly God bless you and what you're doing and the work you're doing. I love that there's people out there helping others. It's one thing to kind of set your own life right, but it's totally more of a dedicated vision and definitely a commitment to help others free themselves from some of those same things. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to having you back with us in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to britevibe.com. That's BRITE Vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.